Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You all know who you are, but do you know who I am? It's time for the one-up loop. You enjoying your Super Bowl? It's okay, because none of that matters. Do you know why? Video games. I may have already mentioned this in a video before, but I'm a pretty big fan of both virtual reality and indie games, and these guys are doing both of those to a T. So basically what you got going on in the game is you have one person with a Oculus Rift headset on and a Razer Hydra motion controller in their hands, and they've got the bomb. It's got a bunch of different wires, buttons with various symbols on it. You have to flip it over to look for the serial number. And the reason for that is everybody else can't see what they're seeing at all and has to go off of a list of instructions on how to defuse this bomb and basically just shout directions at them, which may or may not be accurate directions. And it's a nice little experimental title. It's kind of funny. I'll go ahead and put a link to it in the description, but I definitely recommend checking it out because it looks like a lot of fun. So EVE Online is back in the news this week. Basically, for those of you who aren't aware, EVE Online is a space MMO, flying around in space, blowing up other guys, doing all sorts of player-based commerce, things like that. There was a huge battle the other week. Now, before we get into that, the way the battle came about is kind of ridiculous. These people were signed up with a player-based group. It's called a corporation, and they can be used for any number of things: mining operations, banking, other things like that. Apparently, somebody stiffed somebody else on the bill. Tuition fees, dues, something along those lines. And so there was a tiny skirmish. In retaliation, the resulting battle wound up destroying, among other things, 65 of the largest ship in the entire game, the Titan, which takes a very large amount of in-game money to build and a very large amount of actual real months to train to be able to fly. The grand total of damages after the battle were over 500,000 real human dollars. The reason for that is quite a long time ago, the people who make EVE Online, Rubicon, introduced this system where you could buy game time, subscription time, with in-game money. So X amount of in-game dollars equals X amount of real game dollars. Extrapolate that to 500,000. Now you may be wondering, what exactly does $500,000 look like? Well, it looks kind of a lot like this. Whole lot of lasers. Whole lot of lasers. So for me, the biggest thing that happened this week is Nintendo appears to finally be getting its act together, and I could not be more pleased. They had kind of a bad financial quarter or year, whatever it was that they projected, but they were millions upon millions below their goal, largely due to the low support for the Wii-U. As a result, they're doing a great number of things to regain both their image and their money back, but let's face it, they have enough money to not release anything ever and keep being a successful company for 10 to 15 years, and that is not an opinion, that is a fact. So whatever they do, I'm sure they'll turn out fine. But let's go ahead and go down the list. Alright, so number one, DS games on the Wii U. It's something that everyone has thought is a no-brainer since the system was released, but apparently they are finally doing it. I mean, it makes sense. They've got a giant touchpad with a screen on it, so if you're going to let people play Super Nintendo games and 64 games and other things like that on your console, why not use the DS? I mean, it was a great system at the time. It's got a very huge library of excellent games. So yeah, if you haven't had a chance to experience any of those titles, maybe you've never owned a handheld system of any kind, the Wii U's pretty cheap and it's dropped since the original release price, so it's even cheaper than it was compared to the $400 PS4 and the $500 Xbox One. So definitely a good deal there. Number two, and this is something that they were already kind of working towards earlier in the year with the Nintendo Network ID. Nintendo is working to bring a unified account system together where the 3DS has the same account as your Wii U, has the same account as any other systems that they put out in the future. Now, the reason why this is such a big deal is there isn't going to be any more double dipping of virtual console titles down the road. It still exists right now, but it's what they're working towards. You won't have to buy a game on your 3DS, then buy the same game on the Wii U, what have you, because what they are hoping to achieve is something similar to Sony's PlayStation Now service, where they're going to have like a Netflix-style streaming service where you'll just pay a subscription fee and then you'll have access to their entire back catalog, which I'm all for. I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem shelling out $1-2 a piece for a console title here and there, but if I could just play all of the games for like $10, that sounds like an even better deal to me. I think so. Another very important step that Nintendo is taking is they definitely realize that smartphones are a huge competitor for them in terms of market share, in terms of mind share, other things like that. So what Nintendo intends to do is release either smartphone-based games on their intellectual properties or just the games themselves on smartphones, which is a pretty smart move considering that Microsoft has already put Halo on Windows phones, and Sony just did that tie-in with Knack. It was just kind of like a little Bejeweled clone, but also not based off of their own IPs. Sony Entertainment has just been making apps in general, so it's definitely something their competitors have realized that they need to do to be able to survive in the market, and I'm glad that Nintendo is finally catching up. Also, with all of this money being lost, again, plenty of money to run for 10 to 15 years. Despite that, Nintendo President Satoru Iwata has decided to take a 50% pay cut for the first half of the year in order to help make up whatever financial losses they've accrued. Again, totally unnecessary, but if you've ever seen any kind of an interview with Iwata, he seems like he's just a great guy, and it seems like just the kind of thing he would do. You know, like, no, I'll take a pay cut. It's cool, guys. So, finally, on the flip side of the PR coin, our dear friends at Microsoft just apparently don't know how to promote a console. So earlier this week, Microsoft released an ad campaign saying that you could bring your previous generation console into a Microsoft store and get $100 towards the purchase of an Xbox One, making it $400. That in and of itself, I don't have a problem with. It's a sound strategy. Everybody else does it. I mean, Target takes trade-ins, for God's sake. The wording of this letter that they sent out was, and I quote, "Ditch your PS3 and get an Xbox One for $400. So I'm pretty sure the PS4 already costs $100 less than an Xbox One, in which case I could keep my PS3 and all of the games that I have for it, get a PS4, get PlayStation Plus, which is cheaper than Xbox Live, and then have a bunch of free games for my PS3 and my PS4. So first of all, there's that. Secondly, what are they even going to do with all the PS3s? Like, recycle them? Stare at them and look sad? I don't really know 100% what they could even do with them in the back room at the Microsoft Store specifically. Not to mention, I could probably get more for one at a GameStop or even just selling it on eBay. So it's kind of a moot point all around. But lastly, it just comes across as desperate, Microsoft. Honestly, like, if Microsoft were a person, I feel like somebody really just needs to come up to them, give them a nice pat on the shoulder and just say, hey man, hey, Microsoft, just stop trying so hard. It's okay. It's okay. Well, that is all of the news that I've got for you guys this week. Once again, thank you so much for stopping by. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below, and have a great weekend and a great Super Bowl, I guess, if that's your thing. See you later.